Anyone who is drunk snake wine knows. Snake wine is very nourishing and refreshing, but after drinking, you may be entangled by snakes. I only drank a small cup and was entangled by a snake once. The dormitory aunt, who's over 30 years old and has been divorced for half a year, has been fond of sneaking into our male dormitory recently and always looks at us strangely. That day we had hot pot in our dormitory, and she came again, holding a bottle of snake wine for us to taste, saying that this wine is very nourishing and young people feel great after drinking it. I have been afraid of snakes since I was young. When I see a venomous snake soaking in wine, I always feel like it's alive. I dare not even look at it, let alone drink it. Roommate Wang Chao is a complete foodie and a great drinker. When he saw the snake wine, he immediately handed over the glass. The dormitory aunt poured him a glass. He smelled it and said it smelled really good, then drank it all in one gulp. This wine is really delicious, almost as good as Maotai. Wang Chao gave a thumbs up to the dormitory aunt after drinking. The dormitory aunt smiled mysteriously and said that this wine not only tastes good, but also has unexpected effects. As soon as she said that, the other two roommates also curiously had a drink. Both of them said that after drinking this wine, they felt a warm current flowing down their stomachs, and their whole bodies seemed to have endless energy. The dormitory aunt nodded with a smile, quickly poured them more wine, asked them to drink more, and said that after drinking this wine, your girlfriend will definitely not be able to live without you. Several people couldn't wait to have a drink and praise the wine again and again. The dormitory aunt began to pour for them nonstop, and her eyes were full of heat and strangeness, even swallowing several mouthfuls of saliva. The dormitory aunt saw that I didn't drink, so she insisted that I try a cup too. I really dare not drink, so I quickly avoided it. But she was too enthusiastic, and Wang Chao and the others also joined in and mocked me with guns and sticks. Helplessly, I had to take a sip. With just one sip, I felt a strong fishy smell and indescribable nausea, almost vomiting. I can't believe Wang Chao and the others actually think it tastes good. The snake wine was quickly finished, and the three of them still wanted more. Especially Wang Chao, who even licked the bottle twice. I'm really worried that the snake will come back to life and crawl directly into his mouth. After a satisfying meal, it was time to turn off the lights. The dormitory aunt got up to leave. I breathed a sigh of relief. I didn't like her being so attentive from the beginning, let alone today. She always gives me a gloomy feeling. Finally, the dormitory aunt took the empty bottle and left. Wang Chao and the others were already drunk and hazy, and the three of them climbed onto their beds at the same time. I suddenly feel very sleepy. At this moment, the lights in the dormitory are also off, and the leftovers on the table can be cleaned up tomorrow morning. I yawned and climbed into bed and quickly fell asleep in a daze. I don't know how long it took, but I felt like I was entangled by something, and it became tighter and tighter, and I couldn't even breathe. I opened my eyes wide and saw a python entangling me. The python looked like the white lady who had transformed into a snake when I was a child. The head is a person, the body is a snake. Of course, a head is not by Sujin, but the dormitory aunt. At this moment, she is desperately clinging to me, still lingering in her mouth, saying that she drank my wine and tonight you are my husband. I let out a scream and almost jumped out of bed. While still in shock, I realized it was a nightmare. My chest and back were already sweating profusely, and I was completely at a loss. Because this dream was too real, I hesitated for a while, before reluctantly standing up and touching my swollen and painful head. I thought to myself that I only took a sip of snake wine yesterday, and it has such a strong aftertaste. I think Wang Chao and the others are probably still sound asleep. Upon closer inspection, the entire dormitory was already empty, leaving only me. I'm a little puzzled. These people usually wake up very late, and today is the weekend, yet they rarely wake up. I went down to the ground to wash up first and then fill my stomach. Just as I arrived next to Wong Kao's bed, I suddenly noticed something strange on his bed. Upon closer inspection, it was discovered that it was densely packed with shredded dander, as if the entire human skin had been torn apart. I was stunned in an instant, and all I could think of was the terrifying scene of Wong Chao drinking snake wine and the snake head yesterday. At this moment, I don't have time to wash up and quickly call Wong Chao. No one answered. He's probably in trouble. I hurried out of the dormitory, wanting to find someone to help, but it was gloomy outside today. The dark clouds were low, and the dormitory corridor was empty. Several nearby dormitories are tightly closed, and the originally lively floor is now terrifyingly quiet. This oppressive environment makes me unable to stay for a second. I hurried down to the first floor and suddenly felt the urge to pee. I couldn't hold it in and quickly rushed to the public restroom on the first floor. When I arrived at the restroom, I remembered that it was close to the dormitory of the dormitory aunt, and I couldn't help but feel a little nervous. Open the gate and release the water first. Just as I was about to initialize, I turned my head inadvertently and looked inside. Suddenly, I found a set of withered clothes scattered on the ground. I know those clothes, they belong to Wong Chao. At this moment, I was panting nervously and felt that Wong Chao had probably died naked in the toilet. I walked over nervously and found nothing else on the ground. Chen Yang, you also noticed. Suddenly, a voice came from behind, and I was so scared that I jumped up directly. Chen Feng, you jerk. Can you not suddenly shout and scare your dad to death? Upon closer inspection, I realized that the speaker was my roommate Chen Feng, and another roommate Zhou Long was standing next to him. Chen Yang, the four of us are truly the 404 for little dragons. Any trace between brothers cannot hide from each other. We just found out, and I didn't expect you to find it too. Zhou Long also came over mysteriously and surprised. What did you find? I'm a bit confused. What else could it be? Wong Chao and the dormitory manager's trivial matter. Chen Feng smirked and kicked the clothes on the ground. Following closely, I found out early this morning that Wong Chao couldn't help but come to find the dormitory manager, and the two of them sneaked into the public restroom. Now that the clothes are all taken off like this, what else can there be? Wong Chao is quite fast. However, with the appetite of the dormitory supervisor, it is estimated that this kid will definitely not be fed enough. Zhou Long looked envious and said, "Don't worry, women will come to you sooner or later. Look at how she looked at your chest muscles last night. Her eyes were straight." Chen Feng obviously also wanted to, and the two of them chatted flirtatiously. I don't even want to listen, and my intuition tells me that this is not that simple, because I saw a lot of sticky things in Wong Kao's clothes, which looked like saliva, and the amount was very large. I have studied the data of giant snakes swallowing people. Some snakes spit out clothes and pan after swallowing people, and they carry snake oil mucus on them. Wong Kao's disappearance may be due to being swallowed. Okay, don't be obsessed with all day long. When I asked where Wong Chao is now, I was a bit annoyed by what they said and interrupted him directly. He asked for leave and went home. Suddenly something happened in his hometown, Chen Feng hurriedly said. He left in a hurry. I heard his father had an accident. Zhou Long also said, so that's how it is. I feel a little relieved, but I still mutter why his phone can't be reached. Before I could finish, Lin Feng interrupted, saying that his broken phone was broken 9 times out of 10, and his hometown was in a very remote mountain, so the signal was not good to begin with. Okay, stop talking about that kid. Let's go back and figure out a way to flirt with the dormitory manager. That's the real deal. Yes, Wong Chao has eaten meat. We can't just watch Joe Long also said excitedly. I shook my head. Yes, these two fools are really speechless, but with them around, I'm not as helpless as I was just now. Just as we stepped out of the public restroom, the dormitory manager outside was already waiting there. Why is MEI standing there in such a beautiful dress today, waiting for your Chen brother? That's right. What we're wearing today is really feminine. Chen Feng and Joe Long immediately became excited. I was rolling my eyes. Yes, I was waiting for you guys, Chin brothers. The dormitory manager was also very open-minded and even threw a flirtatious look at me with a warm gaze. I couldn't help but shiver, and my mind couldn't help but think of the dream of the snake body and human head. And just as I looked at the dormitory manager, I suddenly felt that something was wrong. Upon closer inspection, it was discovered that the dormitory supervisor's belly seemed much larger than yesterday, as if pregnant. In an instant, my back went cold. Could it be that Wang Cha was really swallowed by her? The more I think about it, the more something is wrong, and at this moment, the dormitory manager is getting closer and closer, and his eyes almost hooked the souls of Chen Feng and Zhou Long. I'm really worried that the dormitory supervisor will suddenly transform and swallow them alive at this moment. It's going to rain soon. Let's go quickly. I found an excuse and grabbed the two of them and left. Chen Feng is still a little reluctant, facing Sister MEI. Do you still have yesterday's wine? Let's drink some more later. Yes, MEI yet. Have a drink to satisfy your craving. Joe Long also smirked. Okay, sister will bring it to you later. Today will definitely satisfy you, said the dormitory manager with a sinister smile. I just felt goosebumps all over my body and instantly quickened my pace to go upstairs. The sky is getting darker, and there is already a strong wind outside. A rare storm is about to begin. My heart became more and more uneasy, but Chen Feng and Joe Long, these two fools, didn't feel anything was wrong at all. They were thinking about the scene of drinking snake wine and sleeping with the dormitory manager, which made me feel speechless. Lock the dormitory door and think about leaving the school to take shelter outside after the heavy rain stops. My uneasy heart has nowhere to rest, so I couldn't help but call Wang Chao again, but still no one answered. Just as my mood was getting worse, the class monitor suddenly sent me a message. The first sentence at the beginning said, Chen Yan is not doing well. Something big has happened. In an instant, my heart skipped a beat, and my typing hands couldn't help but tremble. Did something happen to Wang Cha? I just sent it out, and they immediately replied to me, not Wang Cha, but Chen Feng and Zhou Long from your dormitory. Upon hearing this sentence, my mind was struck by lightning, and I was stunned on the spot. Chen Feng and Zhou Long next to him were still joking with the dormitory manager. What's wrong with them? I quickly asked. Dead, run over by a dump truck, the squad leader replied. In an instant I stood up, and Chen Feng and Zhou Long immediately smiled and said, Okay, let's not talk about dormitory management anymore. Look at your fake serious appearance. However, at this moment, I can't hear what they're saying at all. Impossible, the person is right in front of me. How could he die? I suddenly feel that the monitor's joke is too big. However, the class monitor said seriously, How could I joke with you about Chen Yang? I only told you because we have a good relationship. This matter is too big. The school is considering sealing up, but I'm telling you, for the first time, if you feel scared, move out of the dormitory. At this moment, I am in a state of confusion. Monitor Zhao is a very principled girl, and she would never say something like this. And just as she finished speaking, several on-site photos were also sent over, and the scene was indeed very tragic, with the two people almost crushed into meat sauce. Upon closer inspection, it was found that there seemed to be no bloodstains around, the most noticeable being the piles of dirty clothes and a large, sticky, thick substance This situation seems to be very similar to Wang Cha, as if the bodies of these three people have long been eaten up. Chen Yang, why are you standing there foolishly? What explosive news do you have? Your face looks pale. At this moment, Chen Feng and Zhou Long suddenly looked over, and I was surprised to see that their necks were covered in cracked skin flakes. Seeing this scene, I almost screamed, but I still suppressed everything with my remaining rationality. I never expected that the two people who were with me this morning were actually dead. Wang Cha is dead. Now Chen Feng and Zhou Long have also become dead. Will it be my turn next? Remembering the way the dormitory supervisor looked at me just now, it was obvious that she was about to harm me. At this moment, there is only one thought left in my mind, and in the next moment, I rushed towards the door like an arrow. Chen Yang, where are you going? Chen Feng immediately stopped me. I'm a little hungry. I'm going to buy something to eat. I hurriedly responded and quickly unlocked it. It's windy and rainy outside now, and there are no stalls left. Where are you going to buy? Zhou Long quickly said, I'm really hungry. I'll walk a little further. There must be more. I'm really anxious, but the more anxious I am, the more chaotic it gets. The lock that is usually easy to open can't be opened now. Forget it. If you go out now, you'll definitely get soaked. It's better to stay in the dormitory obediently. Mei said that he will bring wine and meat over later. It's better to have a satisfying meal than to go out and eat fried rice. Chen Feng had already walked over, and Zhou Long followed closely. I glanced at the two of them from the corner of my eye and found that their faces had completely changed, becoming pale and lifeless, and they had to run away quickly. At this moment I was sweating profusely, and my expression was extremely flustered. I watched as they were approaching me step by step, almost behind me. At this critical moment, the locked dormitory door was finally opened by me. Just as I was feeling fortunate, a gloomy voice suddenly sounded at the door. Chen Yang, it's raining so hard. Where are you going? In an instant, my whole face turned pale, and in front of me stood the cold dormitory manager. I brought the best wine and meat this time. Let's have a hot meal, the dormitory manager said, blocking all the way with his body. At the same time, Chen Feng and Zhou Long had already stepped forward and pressed my shoulder. Chen Yang, come on, take a look outside. The wind and rain are about to blow away. Hurry up, why are you trembling? What are you afraid of? We won't eat you. They had already closed the dormitory door while speaking, and as the door closed, my heart sank to the bottom of the valley in an instant. It's over. This time it's completely over. Come, drink and eat meat. Chen Yang, why are you standing there foolishly? Sit down, Chen Feng said, almost dragging me to my seat. Although we haven't completely torn apart our faces from each other, I still feel the tension in the atmosphere. Immediately, the dormitory manager twisted open the snake wine bottle and spread out the cooked meat. Chen Feng and Zhou Long's faces burst into joy in an instant. They quickly poured themselves a glass and immediately tore off a piece of black meat to gnaw on after drinking. I feel like vomiting just by looking at it. The snake soaked in the snake wine seems to be alive, swimming around in the bottle. The meat is more like the meat on Wang Cao's body, with an indescribable pungent smell. They were eating and drinking like crazy. I don't even want to eat. Just looking at them makes me feel sick. Chen Yang, what's wrong? At least you had a sip of wine last night, but today you didn't even look at it. Are you being so disrespectful? The dormitory manager looked at me and his face turned ugly. No, I'm not hungry. I'll explain quickly. That's not right. Didn't you just say you were hungry? Come and eat, Chen Feng said, grabbing a piece of bloody flesh with his greasy hands and handing it to me. I didn't dare to take it. The expression of the dormitory manager next to him became even uglier, almost with a vicious tone, saying, Chen Yang, you have to eat tonight. Even if you don't eat, you have to eat. I waved my hand repeatedly, but Chin Feng next to me almost forced the meat into my mouth, and Zhou Long even scooped up a bowl of wine to pour into my mouth. At this moment, my back was already soaked in cold sweat, because I clearly saw the dormitory manager holding a bloody pair of scissors in her other hand. It seemed that if I didn't eat or drink, she would cut my throat without hesitation. At this point, cold sweat had already flowed down my cheeks all the way to the table, and even a fool could feel that I was about to give up. At this critical moment, suddenly there was a click in the room, and the circuit seemed to have been eroded by wind and rain, directly short-circuiting, and the surroundings were pitch black in an instant. I only heard the howling wind outside and the continuous raindrops falling. At this moment I stood up without any hesitation and ran away. This is the opportunity given to me by God. Maybe it's the last straw for me to survive. I came to the door again, and this time God continued to favor me, and the hard-to-open lock opened in an instant. Although it was windy and rainy outside, I didn't hesitate for a moment, and plunged into the wind and rain like a string. At this moment, the corridor has already stirred up rain. As soon as I ran out, my whole body was immediately soaked. Although the raindrops hit my body like needles, I completely ignored them. Chen Yang, don't run. Come back to me quickly. The dormitory manager behind me is chasing me desperately, with a terrifying expression and a voice accompanied by wind and rain, which is even more terrifying. I know that my last face has been torn apart. Now I can only run desperately, run out of this dormitory building, run out of this school, in order to have a chance to survive. But the dormitory manager was too fast, almost touching my back in just a few steps. As if the next second I was a little slower, she could press me down. At this moment I am really desperate. Even if God helps me, He cannot change my tragic fate. I want to roar wildly, I want to roar crazily before I die. Just as I was about to resign, a hand suddenly grabbed me in the darkness and pulled me into a small door next to me. The small door closed immediately, and the wind and rain stopped abruptly in an instant. I was still in shock, and my heart was pounding. Don't be afraid, it's okay. At this moment, a silver bell-like voice is ringing in my ear. I was stunned and then realized that the person who pulled me just now was not someone else, but the female class monitor, Zhao squad leader. How could you be here? I am both surprised and somewhat incredulous. Don't speak. She interrupted my question and stared at the small door. I dare not speak, knowing in my heart that I am not completely safe at this moment. The dormitory supervisor is not stupid. Obviously, she knows that Zhao and I are hiding inside. I was a little scared, couldn't help but tremble, and couldn't help but grab Jiaxu's arm. Zhao didn't say anything, just gently patted my hand. Although Zhao is a girl, she is 2 years older than me. Because she is a child from the mountains, she is braver than others. She seems quite delicate, but she has more courage than any other boy. Because she usually takes care of me, and I actually have a crush on her in my heart. It's not just because she's pretty, but also because being with her always warms my heart. Now that she is here, I have a little more courage, and at the same time I have realized that even if I die today, there is nothing to regret dying with my loved one. Just as I had completely resigned myself to my fate and was almost ready to die generously, the dormitory manager outside the door remained silent. I can hardly believe my eyes. I miraculously escaped death. At this moment, I was so excited that I didn't care about anything else and hugged the class monitor tightly. Zhao didn't resist and let me hold her like this. It's okay now, Zhao, I have a lot to say to you. Today, I'm going all out. Let's leave here quickly. I grabbed Jiaxu's hand and didn't care about saving her life today. I have to speak out all the feelings that have been buried in my heart for many years today. Just as I was excited, a gloomy voice suddenly sounded beside Zhao. You can't leave since you've come in. Don't even think about running away. This voice is very familiar. It's not someone else. It's Wang Cha who disappeared. I jumped up from the ground. A bloody figure next to me slowly stood up. It was Wang Cha. He had been sitting in the dark on the other side of Zhao, and I had no idea. Zhao, let's run quickly. I pulled Zhao and wanted to take her away quickly, but at this moment I suddenly felt his hand become cold and piercing, as if it was not a hand, but 1,000-year-old ice, and I was stunned. Through the dim light outside, I noticed that Jiaxu's face was unusually pale at the moment, covered with bloody knife wounds, and black blood kept flowing down her eyeballs. What's more hateful is that her expression at the moment seemed to want to swallow me alive. I let go of my little hand like an electric shock, and my brain completely short-circuited at this moment. Wang Cha is finished. Chen Feng and Zhou Long are like walking corpses. I wanted to take them down first, but unfortunately someone is obstructing them. But it's okay, taking you down first is the same. Chen Yang, you can risk your life, Zhao said, and suddenly transformed into a terrifying female night weasel, grabbing my neck. I was choked by Zizu, and at this moment, although my heart was afraid, there was more deep doubt. Go underground and ask the King of Hell. Zhao gritted her teeth and hated me as if I had killed her whole family. You can kill me, but at least let me die clearly. I'm suffocating more and more, and every word has squeezed out half of my teeth. However, the angry Zhao didn't give me any chance, and suddenly a figure rushed in. I saw it clearly. It was the dormitory supervisor Mei Ya. In the blink of an eye, she unexpectedly fought with Zizu. Meig's strength should not be underestimated. Under the lightning, a giant snake shadow flashed faintly behind her. Zhao is unexpectedly strong, with many ghostly shadows behind her. Endless resentment entangling her, undoubtedly transformed into a fierce ghost. I was completely stunned. My mind went blank. Hurry up and leave. Suddenly the dormitory supervisor shouted at me. I vaguely feel that she seems to be unable to hold on, and the evil spirit on Jiaxu's body is getting heavier and heavier, and the overwhelming anger is almost filling the whole room. At this moment, I don't care who is good or evil. Running for my life is always the top priority. Rushing out of the cabin and into the wind and rain again, I almost lost consciousness and relied solely on a survival instinct to move forward. Chen Yang, don't even think about running away. Even if you run to the ends of the earth, even if you reincarnate for 100 generations, I will make you crumble and scatter your soul. Just as I rushed out of the dormitory building, Jiaxu's shrill voice exploded in the air, louder than thunder. Under the lightning, I saw Jiaxu's terrifying face reflected in the air, and those murderous eyes were staring at me tightly. How big of a grudge is this? I have no idea what happened. Hurry up, the dormitory manager kept shouting. She obviously couldn't stop Zizu anymore. Moreover, the dormitory management has obviously given up on Chen Feng and Zhou Long in order to save me. These two people just stuck their heads out and were directly crushed by Zizu. Currently, Wang Cha, Chen Feng, and Zhou Long in the dormitory are all completely destroyed, leaving only me. When the next thunder sounded, I didn't hesitate anymore and ran away. No matter what, I have to survive. After only running a few dozen meters, I felt like my legs were filled with lead, extremely heavy. The dorm manager behind me seems to be dying, and Jiaxu's ghost is quickly approaching me. At this moment, a black car suddenly drove up not far away. As soon as I saw the license plate, I was pleasantly surprised to find that it was a luxury car newly bought by the homeroom teacher. The homeroom teacher is a good person, gets along well with us, and cares about us. When I saw him coming, I immediately stepped forward and stopped the car. Chen Yang, it's raining so hard. Why did you stop my car? The homeroom teacher quickly asked. I don't have time to explain so much to him. For now, I just want to leave this ghost place, drive away from school, and believe me, if I don't leave now, I will die. The homeroom teacher looked at me with a frightened expression, obviously shocked, but he reacted quickly and turned the car around. Then he tentatively said, "Jen Yang, let's go to the hospital first. You don't have a brain." My mind is fine, and I didn't talk nonsense. I interrupted the homeroom teacher and briefly told him everything that happened. Just as I was talking about Zhao, the homeroom teacher's face suddenly changed, and then he suddenly took out a sharp knife from the car. "Since you have already remembered that incident, I can only kill you with one knife." I was shocked at once. The homeroom teacher's reaction was too big, but he seemed to know the truth. This truth, I'm afraid Wang Cha and the other three also know, but I foolishly forgot everything. What happened exactly at this moment? My brain suddenly felt a sharp pain, as if a saw was pulling back and forth. The homeroom teacher showed no mercy, picked up a knife and stabbed me in the heart. At this moment I couldn't even hide. At this moment, suddenly Jiaxu's mournful cry came from behind the car. "No one can leave today, everyone will die." Upon hearing this sound, the homeroom teacher's originally ferocious expression immediately turned pale, and then trembling hands quickly threw away the knife, immediately turned the steering wheel, and stepped on the accelerator. Strangely, no matter how hard he stepped on the accelerator, the car did not move at all. Looking up, I found that the hideous and terrifying Zhao was blocking the car eerily. The homeroom teacher screamed and trembled all over, pointing at Jiaxu's mouth and wanting to speak, but couldn't make a sound. However, his desire to escape was obviously strong, and he immediately abandoned the car to escape. Just as he was about to open the car door, Jiaxu's face was also reflected in the car. In an instant, wherever there was glass in the car, Jiaxu's pale and smiling face was reflected. The homeroom teacher was frightened and couldn't breathe, as if he had a heart attack. Afterwards, the car began to slowly retreat towards the dormitory building that I least wanted to go back to. The homeroom teacher finally couldn't hold on anymore. His face was pale, his lips were purple, and his desperate eyes stared at me, as if he was asking for help. However, an invisible force was slowly dragging him out of the car, and on the verge of death, his cloudy eyes began to bleed. Frozen images flashed out, and my head hurt again. But at this moment, it seemed as if the seal of some kind of memory had been completely torn open, and I finally remembered. Monitor Zhao is a very charming girl. Although she comes from the mountains, her simple experience cannot conceal her beauty and temperament. Many people at school like her. Not only me, but also Wang Chao, Chen Feng, Zhou Long, and even the homeroom teacher has had a crush on her. Such a beautiful scenery attracts attention everywhere, but it is strange that although I am introverted and cannot please girls, Zhao cares about me more than other colleagues, and every time I feel warm in my heart. But I dare not have any improper thoughts. I know I am not good enough for her, and her future is limitless. However, some people are not so obedient, such as Wang Chao. He was always thinking about how to get Zhao, because his family was rich, and his father was in a high position, and he couldn't get anything good from childhood to adulthood. But Zhao never paid attention to him, and even disliked him a little. It's just that Wang Chao's too sinister. He actually asked me to make an appointment with Zhu, and foolishly, I didn't see Wang Ka's sinister heart at all, and obediently went to make an appointment with Zhu. Zhao was unprepared for me, and it was also a rainy day. I invited her out of school and to a restaurant in the suburbs. I remember that day very clearly. She was dressed particularly beautifully, wearing a snow-white dress, just like Snow White. I was stunned. Wang Cha, who is hiding in the dark, is drooling even more. Zhao said that today is actually her birthday, and she is glad that I can remember. She also invited me to have dinner together. She smiled sweetly, and at that moment I even had a feeling that Zhao had liked me for a long time. Otherwise she wouldn't have smiled so brightly with me. A girl only behaves like this in front of her beloved boy. I was so foolish that I couldn't understand anything at that time. However, at this moment, Wang Chao revealed his true face. He forcibly held down Zizou. He went crazy and showed his animalistic nature in broad daylight. Xiao resisted crazily and looked at me in horror, but I was confused, just about to help Xiao, but was held down by Qin Feng and Zhou Long, the two lackeys. They took out a switchblade and held it against my neck, and at that moment I instinctively cowered. Qin Feng may still have some old feelings, but Zhou Long is a complete ruthless character, with a violent and impulsive personality without considering the consequences. I was afraid he would really stab me to death, and I watched Zizou being humiliated. Unable to bear the humiliation, she picked up the broken glass on the ground and decisively cut her throat, dying in front of me. Those eyes that never closed stared at me tightly, as if I was the one who started all of this. At that moment my heart was thunderstruck, and my emotions completely collapsed. I shouted and screamed like a madman. Zhou Long didn't hesitate and gave me a stick directly. When I woke up a week later, I was diagnosed with selective amnesia. Perhaps that experience was too painful and was sealed by my brain. At this moment, turning back again and seeing those painful scenes, all my emotions completely collapsed, and I began to shout and scream, as if I had gone crazy. I want to apologize with death because I have no face to live in this world. The homeroom teacher next to him let out a final groan. In the whole incident, Wang Chao was the main culprit. Qin Feng and Zhou Long were accomplices, and the other gang was the homeroom teacher. This guy, who is extremely greedy and eager to climb up, knows some clues and even secretly went to the scene several times. He could have pleaded for Zhao. After all, Zhao was also a student he valued, and he once said he would recommend her to graduate school. But he found Wang Chao the first time and greedily reached out for benefits, saying that as long as he could feed him, he could not only help him cover up the truth, but also solve all the subsequent troubles. Poor Jacques Su's father is just a farmer in a mountain valley who knows nothing. After being surrounded by the homeroom teacher, he could only take Jacques Su's ashes back to his hometown sadly. Although the matter has ended, no one can escape the cycle of cause and effect. Finally, the homeroom teacher closed his eyes in pain after the last howl. The next one is finally my turn. Kill me, I don't want to live anymore. Zhao has already harvested for lives. She looked at me coldly with eyes as sharp as a knife. Chen Yang, you really deserve to die. Zhao roared at me, vented to me, and tears sparkled in her mournful eyes. Zhao, I beg you to think again. The four of them really deserve to die, but Chen Yang is at fault. But he doesn't deserve to die. Dormitory supervisor MEI couldn't help but plead for mercy. At this moment, she was already powerless to resist and collapsed to the ground. If he doesn't die, whoever dies, I will kill all the weak and boneless men. If his beloved woman is bullied, he dare not move. Shouldn't such people die? Xiao became more and more excited as she spoke, and the knife suddenly stabbed me in the chest. I closed my eyes and gladly accepted this ending, but just as her palm touched my chest, it suddenly stopped. Tears poured out of Jacques Su's eyes at this moment. Despair, hatred, and endless unwillingness to fate. Chen Yang, I hate you. I will always hate you for generations to come. After speaking, she turned her head without hesitation and slowly walked towards the end of the darkness. I knelt on the ground and kept shouting her name. I knew she couldn't bear to kill me from beginning to end, but precisely because of this, my heart is even more torn apart. I regret it. I turned white overnight and lived in poverty for the rest of my life. After leaving school, I lived with MEI and learned brewing from her. This snake wine is considered evil by many people, but few people know that it can sometimes save lives. If some people are destined to die, drinking more is useless, but if some people are destined to live, drinking a cup can also live. I have asked her more than once if I can still see Zizou. Mei said that Zhao has gone to reincarnation and will forget everything in this life, but she has a deep hatred and obsession toward you. Perhaps in the next life, she may come to find you again, but at that time you don't know her and she doesn't know you either. I don't know how many years have passed. The original school has been demolished, and Mei has also left, and I was too old to move. But on this morning, someone came to my wine room, and she came in with a sinister laughter.